Don't you know they left me all alone?
Okay, this is WGHCR.NYC, 95.9 FM, and we're broadcasting around the World Wide Web at either at GHCR.NYC or at 959.GHCR.NYC, or you could check out our live YouTube channel, and where we are live. So all you have to do is type in live at Grant, and you'll have access to Brother Leroy and his fabulous guest, which Brother Leroy is going to introduce in a second. I'm just getting everything ready. So hold on, let me get your mic up there, Brother Leroy. Go ahead, Brother.
Thank you, Brother Doug. The Tenant Association here at Grant Houses, and we're in the community center, and it is an opportunity for all of us to share some information that touches every fabric of the United States, and definitely those who unfortunately were victims in the recent shooting in Dayton, Ohio. Our guest online is a young man whose cousin happened to be at that scene and was murdered along with the other 8 folks, and we're going to get into that. His name is Jevin Lamar, and he's a producer with Greg Palace. Brother Jevin, thank you for joining us on The Communicators. Can you hear me? Brother Jevin. Okay, I'm not hearing you. The engineer is working on getting that up as soon as he does. And
Jevin, you ready?
Let's see, Jevin, can you hear me? And we're working on that.
Can you hear us?
Jevin, can you hear me? I'm getting static. I'm not hearing his voice.
Speak up again, Jevin.
Hello?
Okay, Jevin, thank you. I want you to speak right into your phone, and that will help us a whole lot. And welcome
Into
to.
the phone, but it's kind of hard for me to hear you. It's like you're very far away.
Okay, he's working on the sound, and is it getting better?
Speak a little louder, brother.
Can you hear me, Jevin? Can you hear me, Jevin? Jevin Lamar. Jevin Lamar.
I can hear you, but it's just like a far echo reverb, like it's super far away.
Okay, you can make out what I'm saying to you, though.
Yes.
Okay, because you're clearer, he's going to bring your voice up, your volume up on this side, and because of time, you don't want to miss the opportunity of getting the information that you have to share with us and how the audience might be able to play a part in helping the family out there of your cousin. And your cousin is Thomas James McNichols, and he was one of those assassinated along in the Dayton, Ohio. Would you please give us an insight on what you understand to be the circumstances of the shooting?
Well, what I understand from the shooting is the guy went to the Oregon District in Dayton, Ohio, and the Oregon District is the safest place that you can go in Dayton. Like, Dayton is it's kind of dangerous. Like, if you go out to certain places that's in the outskirts of the city, it is a liability that you could get shot. But at that place, on that night, nothing like that ever happens. It's foreign to us to happen. Like, that's unheard of in Dayton. Massive shootings, terrorism, that doesn't happen there. So on that night, my cousin had went out and he was just enjoying himself, just grabbing a couple beers or something with some friends. And he actually had to work in the morning. He had to go to work in the morning to provide for his kids. He has 4 kids. He has 2 boys and 2 girls. My cousin is 25 years old. And from what I just feel like it's very tragic. And I also feel like the president had a lot to play to do with this that's going on because the hate that he's giving out.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, I'm saying like for him to insult Dayton by saying I feel so sorry for the city of Toledo at the press conference, that shows us how much he cares. So what I really want to do and what my mentor is helping me do is get the word out, and we're going to start a fundraiser to give his kids funding because his kids they don't have him no more. And like I said before, I said in another interview that he isn't going to see his kids graduate. He's not going to see his kids reach the fullest potential or know what his kids' dreams are. He's not going to see his kids getting married. He's not going to be there. They're not going to have their father there because of a loser. Because of, I'm just going to, if they said it's not racially motivated, which I feel like it kind of was racially motivated, well, I'm just going to say this guy was a loser. He was insecure. And that no one of that night deserved to die because of this guy's insecurities of him being a loser. I feel like he was a big loser for that. And sometimes we have to change as people to understand what's really going on in the world and be more conscious of our surroundings and just know what world we're living in and recognize who is in charge, who is the president. That's one big thing we should recognize, and that's what type of world we live in right now.
Brother Jevin,
very prejudiced world.
No, I'm sorry. What are okay? Your cousin. What was his line of work? And because you indicate he has 4 children, or 2 or 4.
Yeah, he has 4 kids. Two girls and 2 boys.
And he was
under 6 years old.
All under 6, and he was planning to go to work the next day. He was working. He was, not anybody just hanging out. That what were his aspirations?
Just to be a good father and a good husband. He had a wife. He had to go back home too. He had siblings that he protect. He was a brother, a friend. His aspirations was just to go to work. He had a little factory job. That's pretty normal in Dayton to get a factory job and take care of your family. That's just like the norm there.
Right.
Just a regular guy, decent guy. He wasn't into drugs. He wasn't into the violence and gang banging. No, he was just living his life. He was just a regular guy, and he really didn't deserve that. And like his family, both of our sides of our family are just like torn from this because it was so tragic.
Tragic. Tragic. Yeah. He was a young man. He's responsible. And a loving father and a loving husband, and the picture that you're drawing is one of he was a good asset to the family and to the community.
Yes.
And in
he didn't
terms
bother anyone.
Right. In terms of that particular the spot where the assassin murdered the people. What have they drawn from his selection of that particular? Is it a wide open space, or is it a select? Not a select. When I say it's a restaurant or bar to itself.
It was actually okay. So when I used to live there, when I used to live in Dayton, it's a bar called Anna's, and it's a bar across the street called Mickey's. I've never been to Anna's, but Anna's and Mickey's are right across the street from each other. So basically what we do and all the college kids would do was hop back and forth between the bar Annie's and Mickey's. So he shot up the bar Annie's, and the police killed him in less than 30 seconds, but he killed about 9 people, I believe, in that amount of time.
Brother Jevin, a question that I had relating to the deed, and we're getting back to your cousin, is the fact that after the announcement that 9 people were killed, there was another announcement that the assassin's sister and her boyfriend were found in a car, murdered. So that would make it 11 people, but now they include his sister as one of the 9. Did that question?
Oh yeah, he killed his own sister. Yeah.
No, what I'm asking is they said in the beginning that it was 9 people. Does that include the? Well, if they were in, it said that they were, the sister and a boyfriend were found shot in a car, so that would not be at the spot where the assassination took place.
Oh yeah, he drove to the bar with his sister. They drove in the same car. And I guess he loaded up the ammo and the guns when no one was looking in the trunk. But they actually drove there together. That's the story that I got.
Hey, Brother Leroy, they showed the video of the shooter and his sister and a friend. It looks like it was a lady. And they got out the car with him, and they had the timeline of the video from him walking from his car into the bar. And they used 5 or 6 different cameras to show him going in. And he walked in with the sister and the friend, and they went in one bar, and this what this gentleman is talking about. There was a bar across the street that he went in. So they went in one bar, he walked across the street to another bar, stayed for 20 minutes, and they had the camera on him. He walks out, he walks back to the car, and then he goes back in the car, and they had a camera, and he stays at the trunk of the car for about 7 or 8 minutes. And then you see him coming back through the cameras, and you see that he has a backpack and a hood on, and the backpack is very heavy. And so he stopped somewhere else and assembled the weapon, like the young man is saying. And then the thing that I found interesting is that he started shooting, and you could see him shooting, and the people are running from him, and the 3 cops ran towards him. So everybody's running away from the guy with the gun. The 3 cops, they pull out their guns, and they shoot him just as he's walking into the bar. And they showed this on the news thing. And just as he's walking into the bar, they said he had armor clothes on, but he didn't have on armor shorts. And they shot him, and he dropped dead right in front of the door of the bar.
Okay.
If he'd have got inside of there would have been some trouble.
It would have been over, yeah. He would have been more trouble, yeah. Would killing a lot more people.
And brother, the other thing is, Brother Leroy, I don't think, just for adding your 2 cents in, even if he had 2 9mm handguns with, extended, whatever they call them things. Magazines. Maybe he wouldn't have killed 9 people in 30 seconds, but he would have killed 9 people maybe in 50 seconds.
Right.
So it wasn't I don't think them focusing on what kind of weapon he had made any sense, except to say that he had weapons.
Excellent.
Yeah, not the type of weapon and how. They're trying to make it seem like if the guns were the bullet, they killed the people so fast that made a difference. It wouldn't have made a difference if he had a .45 gun. They were sitting ducks. He could have had a .45.
Nobody knew exactly.
Yeah, they were sitting ducks, man.
Nobody was expecting for someone to come and shoot, because that is again the safest place. Correct. When I say the safest place, that when I was there, that's where I would go. That's where I would go down and perform. That's where I would go to party, because I knew at the end of the night I was getting in the car and I was going to go home safely.
But these young kids that are doing this, they know that as well, because if you look at all of the connected dots to all of the shootings, most of the shootings were at safe places. They were at places where people think they're safe. Walmarts, going to a concert, the synagogue, the church. All these the gay kids that were down at the gay club in Daytona. They were all of them had that in common. They were all at places that they felt that they were safe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Jevin, the effort, how is the effort being organized to bring attention to the plight situation of the children, the 4 children, and what can we do?
mentor, Greg. We're going to start a fundraiser for him, and I'm actually dropping a single called Change. And we're going to give all the royalties and what we accumulate for this single to the kids.
Right.
So that's what we're going to try to do. The song's almost ready, but he also has GoFundMe with the family. So if you just type in his name, it's all GoFundMe with our family trying to raise money for him.
That GoFundMe is in action right now.
Yes, for the not the one that I'm launching for him, but the one that my family back home has launched for him.
Right. So,
yes.
Do you have that information to give us?
Yes, I do. Give me just 1 second. Yeah, I just really feel like we gotta get the word out to make people change. We gotta change as change as people, because humanity is falling apart. Like, everyone's human, and I feel like it's like we've been suppressed so long and like judged. I feel like if that guy, he went to go shoot up a majority of that's where black people hang out. So I don't know. They're saying he was at the KKK protest and stuff, but I still feel like it was racially motivated. I honestly do. So it's called Thomas Nicholas Children's Fundraiser. Right now, we raised $400. Their goal is $4,000. It's on Facebook, the link. So that's Thomas McNicholas Children's Fund.
Okay, spell it out for us. THOMAS.
MCNICHOLS Children Fundraiser. And the fundraiser is by my stepmom, Janice Myers, and my father, Devin Myers.
And Jevin, you're in the music business. Is the genre, would that be considered rap?
Yes, sir.
And in that area, as you well know, there is the payment by the major record labels to rap artists to have lyrics that focus on violence and disrespect of female, etc. What might you be doing that's opposite that could very well fit into the vein or the theme that you want to project of positivity, all humanity, particularly that group of individuals who consume rap music, and they don't do mass shootings, but they do kill one another around the country, so that amounts to a mass shooting.
Usually killing each other, like we got a lot of the killing of the races going on. And what about music is, and what people don't understand about rap, and I want to get that out about rap. Right now, the rap that I'm doing is stories. So it's basically a story, and what the kids of my age to understand, us rappers, what we rap about is something that we lived through. It's not nothing that we're doing now, and that's what they get. That's where the confusion comes in at. If you're talking about being a criminal or like selling drugs or something, like hitting a lick or anything, this is all in the past tense. We're telling stories as far as like a writer that's going to write a story about their whole life, or just write about past things. But with the kids of today, they hear us rap and they want to live these things. Like, that's what we're doing, and that's what all this comes from. But actually, money comes from the streams and the tours. So any rapper that's rapping about trapping or doing anything wrong is past that. It's a growth. It's a growth. It's a growth to it, and I need everyone to understand that this is for inner purposes, and it needs to express anger a way to express any emotion. And I do have trap rap songs, and trap is like underground hip hop. But what makes me different as an artist is I can touch bass to, I'm a songwriter as well. I'm a poet. Get this song changes is based on the story. It's about us changing people and us being more aware. It's like, okay, we can say they're racist, this is racist, this is racist, but at the end of the day, people are so racist, that's just in plain sight. We don't have to keep saying it. It's time for us to do something, change about it. We have to make change about it. You know, because it's in plain sight. Racism, anywhere I go, I get looked at different. Anywhere I go, and I'm in California. Anywhere I go, someone's looking at me weird or strange, and I already know, I already feel that hate. But you know, it takes me as a person to recognize it and just move on and grow from it. And try to make the world a better place from it. And I think my music touched the world in a different when this song comes out, because it's coming from such a good place and it's such a message. And I just feel like you're right when they said the music is all about, rap is about guns and stuff, but it is other artists who touch down on bigger issues that just doesn't have the platform because it's not in high demand right now.
Exactly. And song comes, what name are we looking for?
Jevin Lamar, Changes.
Okay. All right. My brother, I want to thank you and our condolences to your family. Thank you very much for your spirit and for sharing. Thanks to Eileen Proctor, Grape, and Lynn, the young lady who's married, Greg, as being strong, Lenny, strong supports for you and your family.
Yes.
Thank you there, brother.
And also, I would like to, if when the song come out, if you would like to have me back on the show, I would love to do that.
Brother, that's automatic, and just keep us abreast, and it will happen, and not only on this show, but on some other shows we're connected with.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you guys for letting me get my cousin's story out. I want everyone to know his name. I don't want no one to stop talking about this.
Yes, sir. Thank you, brother. Your cousin is TJ, the great Thomas James McNichols. God bless you, son. And we'll be next to enter on the communicators. Dr. Gerald Horn. Dr. Gerald Horn. This is, okay, we get volume right. This is Grant Houses Community Radio. The program is The Communicators. And it just came to my attention that Brother Dr. Gerald Horn was on earlier with Sister Nellie Bailey. And it's all good because the information that this brother has is vast and it's due in great part to his research. And he's constantly writing and doing research around the country, and we're very fortunate to have him with us this afternoon. We invited Brother Gerald Horn on to talk about current events and some other matters, and we're going to go right into it. Current events that we may not be understanding as black people that we should understand, and the floor is yours, dear brother. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we're asking, what are some things that are going on current event-wise that we're seeing but may not have a clear understanding of simply because we're not analyzing, or the media that we're subject to is not giving us that which is going on beyond the surface? What's on your radar?
First of all, I guess there's more with China. In some ways, conflict with China represents a fire, a booming of U.S. foreign policy. What I mean is that in the 1970s, a deal was cut between China and the United States as against the interests of the then Soviet Union. You may recall the Russian Revolution of 1917, which led to the formation of the Soviet Union, which included not only Russia, but Ukraine, Lithuania, Estonia, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, etc. But what happened after this deal was cut with China is that pressure is put upon the Soviet Union, and it finally collapsed in 1991. And China was in pressure on the Soviet Union. In return, China gets massive foreign investment, which has created, within the lifetime of many of your audience, this juggernaut. This was obviously not foreseen by those who craft U.S. foreign policy. Now China is the second largest economy on planet Earth. It's in the passing lane, and it bids fair to surpass the United States sooner rather than later. Upset a system that has been in place for hundreds of years, that is to say, a system whereby those, as they say in London, of pure European descent were in the driver's seat. And not only that, but the United States owes China billions, if not trillions of dollars, which makes it ironic notion by U.S. Secretary of State Michael Pompeo lecturing Latin American and African nations not to deal with China because you'll fall into a debt trap. Well, he should know, because the United States is now in a debt trap with regard to China. I mean, that's hypocrisy of the rankest order. And so Mr. Trump is trying to reverse this tide, and he's therefore seeking to place taxes on all the goods that are exported from China. Now, as you know, if you look at the color of your shirt, or if you look at your laptop or your iPhone, etc., most of these goods are made in China. And so Mr. Trump wants to upset that, but that's going to cause a lot of pain for Apple Computer. It's going to cause pain for Starbucks, whose growth in recent years is based upon opening cafes in China. KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, the same. General Motors, Ford. It's really going to be upsetting to many major U.S. corporations. And in fact, you may have noticed that just a few days ago, Mr. Trump blinked. He said that he didn't want to impose any sort of higher taxes on goods people buy for their so-called Christmas holidays. So he lifted some of the tariffs so that you could buy a new laptop or a new iPhone without it being overly expensive. But anyway, this new trade war with China is very significant. as your question suggested, the mainstream press has not provided the background for the audience to understand, because if they did, they'd have to point the finger at themselves. Because, there's all this negative propaganda about China now, some of which actually is not inaccurate. For example, there's this documentary playing in New York about the one-child policy that was imposed in China for years, whereby parents, through various means, shall we say, induced not to have more. Well, they started talking about that now. They were talking about it when the United States and China were in an alliance. I mean, they're only talking about it now because there's this contradictions and conflict between the U.S. and China. So that's the sort of thing people need to be aware of, because, as you know, a basic rule and principle of international relations is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
And so, therefore, even though Moscow was supposedly an enemy of the United States during World War II, when Germany and Japan were in conflict with both the United States and the Soviet Union, the United States made an alliance with Moscow. I mean, they changed all the propaganda.
And China.
Sorry?
And China.
They changed.
They were in an alliance too. That's how China got the UN Security Council.
Right.
But so they changed all the propaganda. They started making, Hollywood started making positive movies about Soviet Union, etc. But one of the things I'd like to warn your audience is that even though, shall we say, China's record has not been perfect, which is an understatement, I know, Brother Leroy, you read The Final Call. And there was a very good article in The Final Call a few days ago. I think the brother's name was Jaron Muhammad. And he was cautioning the audience of The Final Call to be careful in terms of buying into the anti-China line, even though we know that there are problems historically with China. And certainly, we should not say that the enemy of my enemy is my enemy. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, just because Donald Trump launches a trade war, that doesn't mean that we now have to say China is our enemy. I mean, you have to do your own independent analysis, and you have to take into account, for example, the Museum of Black Civilization that China built in Senegal. You have to take into account the major library that has just been built in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, the railway that's been built from Nairobi to Mombasa in Kenya on the Indian Ocean coast, the railway that's been built by China in Ethiopia, which is now landlocked because of the secession of Eritrea some years ago. I mean, take all that into account. And then if you take all that into account and decide that you're going to contradict the line coming out of Ethiopia and Kenya and Tanzania and Senegal, well, sure, go for it. But don't just go for it based upon what you read in the New York Times.
Okay.
I got a question, really.
Yes.
Okay, Doc. When you were talking about the trade thing, I was just wondering, could you help people out a little bit? What is the perceived leverage of this trade thing? I mean, I know he's saying, "Hey, man, I'm going to put the things on him," but I don't see what the leverage is. What's the game here? And the second part of the question is, they're giving big subsidies to the farmers. Isn't that a form of socialism?
No, sure. But I mean, come on. The whole discussion about socialism is really ridiculous. It's just like,
thank you, Doc.
A lot of people in New York don't drive, but if you go further west, there are freeways and there are toll roads. Now, freeways mean it's free to drive. It's just like if you walk down the sidewalk, that's like a freeway. And you can consider that a form of socialism. It's basically the government controlling the sidewalks. A form of capitalism would be toll roads. I don't know if you've ever driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike, Jersey Turnpike.
Yes. They got toll roads here too, Doc, by the way. Toll roads and freeways here. They just don't call it that, but they got that shit here.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So basically, the press, the certain organs of the press, would like you to be in favor of toll roads and against freeways, even though it would be against your interest. And so basically they're trying to induce you to vote against your interests and to cut your own throat. It reminds me, I'm doing a book on boxing now, and so it used to be said about Jack Johnson.
You're doing a book on boxing? Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
And so it used to be, remember Jack Johnson, right?
Yeah, I do remember Jack Johnson. There's a great documentary on him about him on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. So it used to be said about Jack Johnson is that with regard to his opponents, he would get his opponents in such a position that they become Jack Johnson's assistant. And he kicked their butt. They just, and so that's what the press is trying to get us
to be the assistant.
An assistant, and are kicking our own butt.
Good.
Which obviously doesn't make any sense.
You said the press, right, Doc?
The president.
Oh, you said the president or the press?
New York Times.
Okay.
Oh, the press.
New York Times, CNN, Fox News in particular, which I'm sure your audience doesn't watch. Now, with regard to the first part, the leverage, so what happens after this deal was cut in China, with China in the 1970s, all of these, you had all these jobs moved from the United States to China, particularly manufacturing jobs, particularly for textiles, and that is to say, clothes, etc. And then what happens is then they'd be, like Walmart, if you go into Walmart, look at the labels on this very, with the trade war. Most of the goods at Walmart are made in China. The same for Target, Kmart, and Sears when it was in existence. But now China wants to climb the value chain, as they say. They're not content with making cheap goods. Fireworks, all the fireworks you use on July 4th, most of them come from China, for example. But they want to manufacture airplanes, which is a threat to Boeing. For example, they want to manufacture high-tech goods. And so Mr. Trump wants to put taxes on those goods so that those goods will become prohibitively expensive once they hit the U.S. market. That's the leverage that he has, because the U.S. market is still the biggest market for any country. And of course, we could get into the history of how that happened, slavery, dispossession of the Native Americans, etc. So that's the leverage that Mr. Trump has. The problem is that the U.S. market, the U.S. audience, is not accustomed to pain. I mean, first of all, you have a lot of poor people in this country. They can't afford to pay more for goods, be it whatever the goods might be. And then, second of all, a lot of Mr. Trump's base, even though they vote against their own interests, are not necessarily wealthy either. And so, you mentioned the farmers, for example. The Midwestern farmers were selling billions of dollars in soybeans to China. But now, with the trade war, China stopped buying those soybeans, and they're starting to buy soybeans from Argentina and Brazil and Russia.
That was
those markets are lost.
That was my question. That was my point, Doc. I saw something on TV, and I saw the farmers. This is before he did it, and they was going, "We're getting shitted. We're getting shitted. We're not being treated Chinese, and they're doing this to us, and they're doing that to us." And they thought that, and I said to myself, they thought by this guy, the president coming in and saying, "Okay, here's what we're going to do," they acted like the Chinese didn't have other customers to go to. That's why I asked you about the leverage.
Exactly.
What was wrong? What were they thinking?
And now, of course, Mr. Trump, I noticed you use the term subsidy, which is a totally acceptable term. But of course, it was going to us, it'd be called welfare. You see.
Well, I wanted you to say welfare because you're a doctor and it might mean something.
Oh, I see.
You mean?
This is how the system works. If it goes to the Republican Party base, it's a subsidy, it's okay.
You're making a point, Doc. Doc, you're making a point. You're making a point, Doc. They don't care that they're giving them guys all that welfare. Worried about Mr. Immigrant getting some food stamps.
Absolutely.
There you go.
But this is part of the contradiction
of the country
that we see of living in the United States. But the only caution, and it's a sobering caution, and I'm sure this is not news to your audience, is that despite all of the misdeeds and crimes and racism and misogyny of the current occupant of the White House, it's not a guarantee that he'll be defeated at the polls in November 2020.
No.
That is what people need to think about.
It should have been a guarantee that someone like that didn't get in. That's what really should have happened.
Well, clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly. I mean, he's obviously incompetent. He's about to lead the country into a recession. All the alarm bells are ringing with regard to a downturn in the U.S. economy. What does that mean? That means more people lose their jobs. That means a cut in wages. That means more evictions. That means higher rents. That's what a recession really means concretely. And this is what this president is leading us towards. And so the problem that emerges then is that with a deteriorating economic situation, that creates conditions for a crisis that leads the politicians to take emergency measures that then disproportionately impact our community.
Such as?
And that's what we have to be worried about in the run-up to November 2020.
Such as? When you say emergency measures, what's an example of that?
Well, we already see a hint of that on the border, where you see children in cages.
Don't go there, Doc. That's some bullshit right there. That's some bullshit right there, man.
We got to be real now.
Yeah, but that's some bullshit right there, man. That kid shit. That doesn't. I mean, you can see that people are sleeping at the wheel when they act like that's okay. Because nobody's going to let anybody come to their house and take their kids, and something he could just wake up tomorrow and say, we taking these people's kids or that people's kids. I don't understand why people aren't batshit crazy about that.
Well, speaking of which, and here's a tip. I regret having to make that tip. This tip is that draconian measures could mean mass incarcerations at Yankee Stadium, for example, because you need a place that only has a few entrances and exits.
Correct.
That can house many, many, many people, and they're not that in. And one which is Yankee Stadium, for example.
Correct.
So keep that in mind every time you take the 4 train.
Brother, Dr. Horn, in terms of the China piece,
Hey, brother, get closer to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your comrade's voice comes in much clearer than yours.
Okay, I'm sorry. Dr. Horn, in terms of the China piece, how back in the 20s, the 1920s, China was not a world power by any stretch of the imagination. However, there's at least one book, The Rising Tide of Color, which forecasts the danger of China. Now, that book is, for me, it's probably read in some of the international curriculum that I'm not exposed to. I'm not exposed to. In other words, they study this stuff. They're looking at forecasts. How could they then strengthen China through a deal in the 70s and wind up with China being in the position that they're in now? And I'm asking from the standpoint of just how come. I'm not asking from the standpoint I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, and I don't like the way this thing is going. I'm not asking from that zone at all.
So you're asking, why didn't Henry Kissinger and Nixon foresee that the deal they cut in the 1970s was boomerang?
It's as though the deal was made thinking, okay, as we discuss it, they could have made the deal thinking that they would not become this strong, that there was something that would happen to make them weak or whatever. But I'm not certain. But the Rising Tide of Color, for a little guy like me in Harlem to know about that book and to know it was written by Admiral somebody. There's another book of that nature, but I can't remember the name. That they're aware of this. So however you interpret what I'm putting on the table, just give your insight.
Well, keep in mind that up until about 1800, the major economic force was China. It was only then that the accumulation of wealth generated by the African slave trade and the dispossession of Native Americans beginning in the 1500s began to assert itself. And then, as you know, by 1841, Britain, which was then the reigning superpower, seized Hong Kong, and China was being carved up like a turkey. Unlike certain parts of Africa, where you had the British as the major power in what is now Nigeria, or the French as the major power in what is now Mali, China was carved up by many countries, including a rising Japan, I should say. And also, the United States and France got their share as well. And I think that perhaps the author of A Rising Tide of Color may have been more aware of that pre-1800 history.
Okay.
When in the 1920s, he saw that China could still rise. But in any case, I think that even with the deal cut in the 1970s, it was not inevitable that China would rise the way it has. I think that one of the issues that China the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Oh,
and
okay.
That happened in 1991, as you know, and Russia was on its back for a number of years before it's come storming back under the leadership of Vladimir Putin. And now, as you know, Russia and China are as close as lips and teeth. And this gets me to part of the critique of the press, because I don't know if any of you are baseball fans.
Go ahead.
Or even a football fan, because it's now football season. You know how certain offensive formations in football, the quarterback will send a receiver in motion, he'll gesticulate to the tight end to move, split out 5 yards to the left, and then run the ball up the middle. But I think that basically the press has not done a very good job of helping to apprise its readers of what's going on. And particularly with regard to Donald Trump, because I think that Donald Trump is like that quarterback. He does a lot of, or even like a magician who makes you look to the left as he pulls a trick off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
So he does a lot of nonsense, and you basically are not picking up what he's doing. And so
They're picking it up.
I think that what Trump and those behind him, because he's not just an individual, he represents a group of people, they would like better relations with Moscow so they can better undermine China. That's what that's all about, it seems to me. And the press, they don't really report that. They don't pick up on that.
They're not objective.
And therefore, they give a misleading picture. Now, here's something, let me the press for a second.
Yes.
You can go back to your main thread,
Yes.
Brother Leroy. But here's another example of bad press coverage. I'm sure you're familiar with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
The alleged millionaire who just died in Manhattan, supposedly by suicide. Mm-hmm. Now, we all know about his trafficking in young girls and women. The press has not done a very good job, it seems to me, of reporting. I'm afraid, and this is a very sensitive subject, so I hope it doesn't help to drive you all off the air. The press has not done a very good job of detailing his ties to Israeli intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's reason to believe, because we're still not clear as to where he got all of his wealth. I mean, some people say it's through his connection to Leslie Wexner of Columbia, Ohio. Leslie Wexner, in the Wall Street Journal a few days ago, and of course he helped to start Victoria's Secret, the lingerie company. Wexner said that Epstein cheated him out of $46 million. And when I was reading this article, I said, well, why don't you go to the police? Why are you telling us this now that he's in prison? But But if you dig into the background of Wexner, and you want to get some of your journalists on the final call on this story,
Right.
you'll find that he has some of these same rather suspicious connections as well. And so I think that if you dig more deeply into the Epstein case and look at his ties to Ronald Lauder, also of Manhattan, of the Estee Lauder fortune, formerly U.S. ambassador to Austria, look at his ties to Edgar Bronfman. The Bronfman family, as you know, is made their fortune out of bootleg liquor
Seagram.
in the 1920s, of course, before turning legitimate, quote unquote, and helping to buy into entertainment and DuPont chemicals, etc. Sherry Bronfman, one of the Bronfmans married this black woman, Sherry, and then they had a divorce. She's one of the richest black people in the United States right now, if not the world. And one of your final call journalists really needs to look into that and the ties to Israeli intelligence. Now, the New York Times, to its credit, did have an article some weeks ago about Jeffrey Epstein's ties to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. So I give them credit for that. And it was a very interesting article, by the way. And I will also say that the New Yorker, obviously headquartered in Manhattan, had a very exhaustive analysis of Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, who was on television all the time and is a retired Harvard law professor, and has a few skeletons in his closet as well, I'm afraid, including a lawsuit where he's being accused of trafficking in these young girls as well. But my point is, with regard to a press critique, is that his political ties and where he got his fortune has not penetrated the press with all this coverage, round-the-clock coverage on CNN, MSNBC. But that particular angle has not been explored. That's why I'm depending on the final call to explore this.
Wow.
I got a question.
Yes.
Okay, Doc. So, just for shits and giggles and clarity perspective, how in the world does the United States owe? Why are they borrowing money from China? And when they print their own money, why are they borrowing money from China? How did it get so large when they could print their own money? I mean, why are they doing this shit?
Excellent question. Number one, the United States, they have a mania about cutting taxes, particularly against the wealthy. What is the signature aspect of Mr. Trump's re-election campaign? That in December 2017, he passed through this multi-billion-dollar, perhaps multi-trillion-dollar tax cut, mostly benefiting the wealthy. But politically, the Republicans don't have the muscle to cut programs. In other words, they borrow so that programs, the post office, food stamps, etc., stay afloat. But eventually, particularly if this crisis with China gets more severe, then China will stop lending money to the United States, and the United States is either going to have to raise taxes against the wealthy or cut programs. And as you know, they're probably going to cut programs, which means they're cutting the post office, cutting food stamps, cutting Section 8, housing subsidies. Now you ask, why don't they? The problem there is that it may lead to a
Inflation?
deterioration of the value of the currency.
Inflation.
I used to live in Zimbabwe, for example, and you don't want to go through a currency collapse. What does a currency collapse mean? A currency collapse means, for example, that you go to a bar and order, well, I know you gentlemen are abstemious, so let's say sparkling water. And when you order it, they say it'll be 10. By the time you finish it and ask for the bill, it's 300. For example. Or a collapse in the currency means that I remember in Zimbabwe, the equivalent of a Social Security check that was sent to the elderly, it wasn't worth as much as the postage stamp because of the collapse of the currency. That can be reduced by using your printing press to print more dollars and basically helping to debase the value of the currency. And that's something that folks are concerned about in the long run. It doesn't seem like in the short term there's a danger of that, but with this crisis with China spinning out of control, who knows what's going to happen.
So, Doc, let me get this straight. You're saying that the United States government, which is run by a very small group of people of the same race and the same gender for the most part, they were borrowing money to cover things that they needed to do while they was also taking money and giving it back to people and they couldn't afford to do it? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, I'm saying that the U.S. government, they have, aid to higher education, aid to K-12 education, the Pentagon budget, let us not forget that, turning money over to Lockheed Martin and to Boeing.
$781 billion last year.
Exactly. And so where do you get that $781 billion from? I mean, you can get it through taxes or you can get it through borrowing. These folks have a mania about cutting taxes, particularly with regard to the wealthy, which leads only to borrowing. And that, when you talk about borrowing, you talk about the People's Bank of China.
Well, we can't do that. We can't do that, Doc. We can't. We're not. If one of us did that, we would be irresponsible if we're borrowing money to pay for our TVs and all that stuff, and we don't have any way to pay it back. I mean, you know what I mean? And then we're going to start have a trade war with someone with a lot of money. I mean, you're starting to make me think that this is not making any sense.
Well, speaking of trade wars, the other point I should make is that this is the ace in the hole for Washington and Wall Street, is that you mentioned that $781 billion Pentagon budget. The United States spends more in the military than the next 4 to 5 to 6 nations combined, which would mean Russia, China, etc. So the United States feels that its trump card, pardon the expression, is the military, is a sharpened sword. And so therefore, Mr. Trump just engineered a multi-billion-dollar arms agreement with Taiwan, the island nation off the coast of China, which China claims, which is technically part of the People's Republic of China. And I'd like to borrow military to China. Of course, clashes between the Chinese and U.S. military in the South China Sea. And I should also say, so people can get a fuller picture, that China, not militarily, but financially, has invested heavily in the Bahamas. I don't know if you've been to the Bahamas lately, but Chinese interests have invested heavily in the Bahamas. Of course, they have very close relations with Cuba, 90 miles off the shores of Florida. As you know, and this is a subject of controversy in Jamaica, but there's the Chinese hope to build this north-south road connecting the north-south side of the island to the south side of the island. Although I was on Jamaica radio a few weeks ago, and some of the folks down in Jamaica are not very happy with China. And so increasingly, these two nations are moving towards a confrontation that goes beyond a trade war, perhaps to something that's even more dangerous. And I would only caution and warn your audience, and I'm sure you have a sophisticated audience, so this is probably unnecessary, to not necessarily join in to this conflict. Because what's interesting is that the Republicans and the Democrats are united with regard to their antipathy and animosity towards China. In fact, your own Chuck Schumer, the senior senator from New York State, has been criticizing Mr. Trump from the right for not being even sharper in his confrontation with China. Same holds true for Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who of course has a large population of Chinese descent in her San Francisco-based district. So it's going to be an enormous pressure on the black community to join in to this crusade, this new crusade, since the Democrats in particular are heavily dependent upon the black vote. But you should ask yourself, what would black people gain from joining into this new crusade?
Dr. Gerald Horne, going to hit some points real quick. And the issue with associating Trump with Putin is based around the allegation that Russia was involved in maneuvering the election towards him. However, there are at least two instances in the Russian presidents being tools of the United States. I can't call the names, but I can't remember the names. But I'm talking about, this is rumored to be that they were in the back pocket of America, and they can you shed some light on what I'm touching on?
Well, first of all, just to repeat what I said a moment ago, I think that those around Mr. Trump are now more worried about China than anything else. And so they would like to enlist Russia in this anti-China crusade, just like they would like to enlist India in this anti-Russian crusade as well. And even North Korea. I think that these overtures to Chairman Kim in North Korea are in part about trying to create a problem for China on its northeastern border by improving relations with North Korea. And it's also about doing a shakedown with Japan and South Korea. That is to say, getting South Korea to cough up more money for those 37,000 U.S. troops in South Korea, and also getting Japan to cough up more money, because there is this historic animosity between both South and North Korea on the one hand and Japan on the other. Now, basically, this is based upon the fact that there was a brutal Japanese colonialism imposed on the Korean Peninsula between 1910 and 1945.
Right.
And I'm sure that some people of African descent are scratching their heads and saying, only 35 years? I mean, damn. I mean, what about 350 years? I mean, you know, et cetera. But in any case, so China is in the crosshairs. And so all of U.S. policy is directed towards undermining China. Now, with regard, and that helps to explain why Trump is making overtures to Russia. But even if you read the Mueller report, which I recommend, because it's interesting, after November 2016, when Trump was elected, according to the Mueller report, Vladimir Putin is he's surprised by the election results too. And so he's trying to call people he knows in the United States to make connections with the Trump camp. That's according to the Mueller report. And so if there was this so-called close relationship between Putin and Trump, why is he looking for third parties to connect them? See, I think that oftentimes in discussing this, quote, Russian interference in the U.S. election, which I don't deny, you have to make a distinction between Russian nationals and the Russian government. Just like I don't think that the words of Gerald Horne should be ascribed to Donald Trump. I mean, just because I carry a blue passport doesn't mean that I'm always acting in the interest of Donald Trump, or ever acting in the interest of Donald Trump, for that matter.
Right.
And with the collapse of the Soviet Union, you had these billionaires who were created as us. They have their own independent interests. I mean, I'm sure you all are basketball fans, and you know that until recently, the Brooklyn Nets were controlled by a Russian billionaire. Now it's controlled by a Chinese billionaire.
Right.
And so you have all these Russian millionaires and billionaires, they have their own agenda. And there has even been clashes between the Russian government under Putin and some of these millionaires. Some of them he's jailed. And so oftentimes in the U.S. press, there's not a critical distinction drawn between Russian nationals on the one hand and the Russian government on the other. And then the other point that I would make is that I think that Moscow feels that it made a mistake during the Soviet period, 1917 to 1991, by only having ties to the U.S. left, which does not wield that much influence in North America, to put it mildly. And so now I think they're spreading their bets. For example, I'm on Radio Sputnik all the time, which is in many ways, more it's to the left of Pacifica. It's to the left of WBAI. It might even be to the left of Grand House Community Radio, believe it or not. And it hardly comports with this idea of, and I go in there and denounce Trump from morning to night, all the time. It's based in Washington, D.C. So I think people have to be more nuanced in their analyses of these questions. And I would say particularly some of our friends on the U.S. left who are not very nuanced when it comes to this sort of analysis. Okay,
going real quick. Looking at history, what similarities might there be between the condition in America and that which made after the Civil War? Any similarities?
Well, obviously after the U.S. Civil War, there was the Reconstruction period, 1865 to 1877. This was the period when you had these black elected officials. You had black men in the U.S. Senate, black men in the U.S. House. And then there was a counter-revolution with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and terrorist organizations, the rise of lynchings. These black elected officials were driven from office. And I think that the obvious comparison is with the optimism that seemed to prevail between 2008 and 2016 with the election of the 44th U.S. president, and many people naively in retrospect felt that the United States a corner and that we were headed towards a so-called post-racial society. I'm sure you remember that phrase.
Right.
But what they had forgotten, or what they did not realize, is that, as I've tried to stress in my own writings, is that a central theme, if not the central theme, in the history of the United States has been counter-revolution. I argue in my book, The Counter-Revolution of 1776, that the country was formed because of a counter-revolution against the growth of the abolitionist movement. That's the movement to abolish slavery that was growing in London for various reasons. And it's not a shock and surprise, therefore, that the so-called revolutionaries were led by slave owners. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and all. It was a counter-revolution that created this country in the first instance.
Yeah, counter-revolution.
Sorry?
I was going to say counter-revolution for one group, though. There was one group that was trying to separate itself from its appendage to, their motherland. Yes?
And of course, the so-called revolution of 1776 did not represent the majority of the people who resided in North America.
That was the point.
Certainly, a goodly number of Native Americans did not support the slave owners. Certainly, a goodly number of Africans did not support the slave owners. Certainly, there were so-called British loyalists who had to flee to Canada as their property was taken, who did not support these alleged revolutionaries. And so I think that the parallel between the post-Civil War and today was a kind of misplaced optimism that the United States had turned the corner, that it was turning aside from counter-revolution. Now, I think with the election of 2016, we're in the midst of a counter-revolution.
Wow.
And it's not clear what it's going to result in. I mean, of course, I could spin worst-case scenarios, as I just did by talking about pay attention to Yankee Stadium. but it's not clear what is going to happen. And even some of your so-called liberal friends who still have a naive optimism in the United States, if you press them, they cannot say for sure that Trump will be defeated in November 2020.
Of course not.
They cannot say, nobody can say that for sure.
Of course not. They're allowing. They didn't say anything when he, started off with his racial tropes. They didn't say nothing. Then they allowed it. I got another type of question. My question is: I've been paying attention very closely to the news, and in the wake of all of this proclaimed white supremacy and race white stuff they've been in, they have been preaching or putting out the fact that they have no way of no laws that they can use to the FBI. This is the FBI guys for domestic terrorism, and they've been putting that out over the air over the last few days. And my question to you is, if they didn't have any laws for that, what was they using on the Black Panthers? What laws was those?
Well, sure. Obviously, that's nonsense. That's poppycock. It's balderdash. Pay attention to the
or bullshit.
Sorry?
Or bullshit. Go ahead.
Oh, you can use that on the radio?
Yeah, we doing it.
Okay. Well, pay attention to what the current occupant of the White House did yesterday.
Okay.
Yesterday, as you know, there was this demonstration of Klansmen and Nazis and fascists in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, I know where you're going.
And they were confronted by Antifa, the so-called anti-fascists, who make a habit of going into the streets and confronting the Klansmen and beating them up.
Yeah, the fascists.
So what does the 45th president do? He threatens to put the label of terrorists on not the Klansmen and the fascists, but on Antifa, on the people who beat up the Klansmen and the fascists. Now, I don't know what kind of signal that this guy has to send to convince people that he's serious. And with regard to your point, obviously there are all sorts of laws that can be used to destabilize these white supremacists. I mean, for example, what about informants? What about infiltrating their ranks? What about doing what they did to the Black Panthers?
Oh, you mean COINTELPRO?
One Black Panther.
Yeah, COINTELPRO.
Exactly. Where, you tell this one Black Panther, that your comrade, he has a thing for your old lady, so, you better be careful, and then next thing you know, they're shooting at each other. So, there are all sorts, come on, there are all sorts of tools that the FBI could use. The question is there the political will? And the problem is, of course, is that these Klansmen and Nazis and fascists, the people who Secretary Hillary Clinton called the deplorables, they're an essential component of the political base of the Republican Party right now. That's why in August 2017, a scant 2 years ago, when you had the demonstrations in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Mr. Trump referred to some of the Klansmen as fine people. And then, of course, he kept going back and forth. Remember, as he oftentimes tends to do, he made this statement on a teleprompter, reading from a teleprompter, where he sounds totally insincere. For example, he did that a few days ago after the El Paso shooting. And it's almost like a hostage video. It's almost like people are forcing him to make these statements criticizing the ultra-right. And then when he speaks off the cuff, when he's not speaking from a teleprompter, then he states his true feelings and true beliefs. Now, look, your audience is a sophisticated audience. They know this. So the question obviously becomes, what is to be done?
Oh, to me, he looks like if people aren't smart, it would be in their interest for those guys to go. And I would think that if you had a system, particularly, maybe give some feedback on this, I became very interested in the fact that you have a Senate where they've decided that they're not going to do anything based upon one guy. And I'm just wondering what kind of democracy you have when one guy, that would be Bitch McConnell, could get up and decide that he's not going to let anybody have democracy. They're not even going to contemplate anything. And I find that the media are not, they're just not truth tellers in this, and they're just not, agents of telling the truth. And I think when the 44, 45, whatever his number is, 9, because that's how old he acts. Whenever he whatever he says, they actually treat it like the gospel. Just ignore that he is clearly a liar. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, sure. I mean, obviously the media. Jeff Zucker, who runs CNN, has been semi-apologetic for the fact that during the 2016 campaign, they run rallies.
That was unbelievable. I didn't understand that. I didn't understand why they were doing that. Why was they know the guy? If, here's the point I want to make, Doc, right quick, get your feedback. If, as a professor and you're a doctor, if someone came into your class and they audited your class and found that you told 25 lies yesterday, 25 lies today, 25 lies the day before that, I don't think you would be working there much longer. I think that they would say, "Hey, we got to get rid of this guy." If you went to your church and the preacher lied like the president does, I think that guy would be thrown out instantaneously. But yet somehow the media has not figured out that the guy is a straight out liar. And one more thing, Doc, if you look up the attributes of a psychopath, he hits a lot of the boxes. What say you, Doc?
Well, obviously you're correct. But I think...
Brother Leroy, did you hear that, Brother Leroy? He said I was correct. I just wanted to get that on the record.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, obviously. But I think in order to unpack this, you have to understand that the press, these are profit-making corporations.
There you go.
Controlled by powerful interests like the Sulzberger family that controls the New York Times.
Could you say that again, Doc?
The Sulzberger family.
No, I'm talking about the
New York
profit-making
Times,
part.
for example.
I'm talking about the profit-making part. I don't think people know that.
Oh, yeah, sure. They're profit-making enterprise. They have stockholders. They sell shares. They're trying to make money. That's why they have ads.
So they're not honest. So they're not considered honest brokers if you look at that.
Well, no, because if Trump is putting money in their pockets, here's a tightrope they have to walk. That December 2017 tax cut really benefited the 1%. And that is to say those who have the most money, the most power, the most wealth, who controlled the New York Times company, control Fox News, etc. And so, on the one hand, they feel somewhat sympathetic to Trump because he's putting money in their pockets. At the same time, some of them are rather nervous because of his open alliances with Nazis and fascists and Klansmen.
How come that's okay?
But, well, do you remember the comedian Jack Benny? I don't know how old you
Yes,
are.
I do.
So,
Yes, I do. Yes,
okay.
yes.
So you remember Jack Benny used to do this comic bit. He was known for being cheap.
Cheap, yes.
And for, squeezing a dime out of a nickel.
That's right.
And so a robber comes up to him,
Money and life.
puts a gun in his ribs and says, "Your money or your life?"
That's right. I know this.
And Jack Benny, and he's torn. He can't decide what's more important, his money or his life. And he's thinking. And so that's the problem with some of the people in the 1%. They value their money more than their life.
You left out the part of the joke, Doc, where the robber sticks the gun back into him and says, "I said your money or your life," and then he looks at him and says, "I'm thinking about it."
Right, exactly. So that's the problem with some of these folks. I mean, they can't decide what's more important. Their money or their life. And most of the time, they decide it's more. Actually, this ties into another trope that I use in my classes when I talk about the African slave. Was one of the most lucrative enterprises in the human kind. I mean, $1, $1,800.
Wow.
As my, you sell your firstborn for $1,700, and if this were like 1688, for example, when $1,700 really meant something.
So you're saying, Doc, we're not getting rid of fentanyl. There's not going to be any fentanyl, Oxycontin going anywhere anytime soon. Is that what you're saying, Doc?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, I'm sure they make Oxycontin or fentanyl for like $1, and the pill costs $30 out here on the street.
Oh, I dig.
I'm just updating the game, Doc. I'm just updating the game.
I understand. I thought that you were going to go in another direction, which is that studies have shown that doctors have been less prone to prescribe painkillers to black people.
Oh yeah.
Because they're not subject to our being in pain. And you can even make an argument some of them like to see us in pain.
Oh, so that's
So paradoxically, one of the reasons why the Sackler family, which of course has made a fortune
of
through selling painkillers,
Yes.
one of the reasons it disproportionately impacted those who define themselves as white is because doctors are more sensitive to their pain, and so they want more prescriptions for them.
Oh, so
Whereas
that.
they're not as sensitive to our pain.
Oh, so-
and they wrote less
Oh,
prescriptions.
so that's why they get the pills of the prescription pills for $3 a pill, and people on the street buy the pills for $20 or $30.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, Doc, before we conclude, there is, going back to Trump and the people behind him, there's a book, Democracy in Chains, by Nancy McLean, and she talks about, there's a book, Democracy in Chains, by Nancy McLean, and she talks about the Koch machine being in KOCH, being involved in the Trump administration, and that 70% of his appointees are from the Koch machine. But most importantly, in her book, she talks about this guy, Buchanan, down in Virginia, who writes this document that's adopted by the university president of Virginia. And it's written at a time when black people, all we wanted was so-called integration, 1956. But the impact of that document is taking place right now. And the point is that the impetus for that document was black people seeking some kind of freedom or justice or betterment in the United States. So at the root of this whole thing is black people trying to get out of the locked-in situation that we've had. So the question is, the significance of that is beyond other things that we see today. The root of it is, in America, black people striving to be free, and us being naive to that. When I say that, I'm saying that we aren't aware the significance, just a little bit of progress is blocked out or desired to be blocked out by the folks we're dealing with. Your comment?
Well, I think your point is well taken, and the only point I would leave your audience with is the necessity to make alliances abroad. Alliances with the Iranians, to make alliances with the Cubans, with the Mexicans, to make alliances with the Angolans and the South Africans and progressive Brazilians, because right now, and this has been the case for some decades, the deck is stacked against us in North America, and this is nothing new. And the way we've been able to circumvent that in the past is leveling the battlefield, not having the battlefield just be North America, but making the battlefield the entire world. And with the advent of the internet and sophisticated telecommunications and supersonic transport, it's possible, even more so than in the when Frederick Douglass Weeks to sail to London at a time when England was still at Swords Point with its former colony, the United States of America. And certainly with regard to Democracy in Chains and the book by Nancy McLean, the Duke historian, which points up the deep entangled roots of the right wing in this country and its connection to the Koch brothers of Wichita, Kansas, who have one of the largest privately controlled corporations in this country. Privately controlled, meaning that they're not selling stock. So thereby they have to make, basically, they have to open the kimono, as they say on Wall Street, and reveal all the details of their enterprises, like a publicly traded corporation like the New York Times or Time has to do. This is a private privately controlled corporation. And it's like Leroy Ball Incorporated without selling stocks. It's controlled by you and your family. And so, even with that book, it's still not clear about all the pies that the Koch brothers have their fingers in, because it's precisely is a privately controlled corporation. So, once again, I salute you, brothers. I wish you well, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Dr. Gerald Horne on the Communicators. God bless you there, brother. Peace.
Good luck to you.
And that has been